names. Daniel's academic works on domain names have been published in leading IP publications. With that, I will turn it over to Daniel to start the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Marina. Thank you for that introduction. I would also like to welcome the attendees to this webinar. I'd like to start off at the agenda, just so you know what we would be discussing for the remainder of this webinar. The first is the new gTLD success. We'll go through some popular and not so popular gTLDs, some that have been abused, just so you know where all these new gTLDs fit in. Some recent UDRP cases, so you can see where these new gTLDs are being abused and what type of trademark owners are taking action against them, as well as the future of new gTLDs in 2017 and beyond, and then some points on the impact of the new gTLD program on brand owners now that we are aware and know how the program is developing. So before we jump straight into it, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Lexsynergy. We manage domain name portfolios for trademark owners and law firms and provide strategic advice and support. In addition to that, our brand protection department provides a variety of services such as copyright takedowns. We remove Facebook pages that are fraudulent or infringe copyright, Twitter accounts, and any other social media, as well as on e-commerce platforms such as Alibaba. And we do this via a network of offices which we have around the world. We have a particular focus on Africa, but we also have a presence in the UK, Australia, and the US. So with that brief introduction, I'll just jump into the new gTLD program and give you, or for those of you that don't know, a quick crash course of the new gTLDs. So basically, about 3 years ago, we had about 20 or so TLDs, such as .com, .org. Then the new gTLD program exploded onto the scene, introducing over 1,000 new gTLDs. As you can see, there are another 300 to launch, so TLDs such as .law, .fashion, .sucks, and a few other interesting TLDs launched. And this has had an impact on trademark owners, which I'll discuss later on. It has been a bit chaotic, but now that the program is coming to an end, clients have some sort of strategy and an idea on how to deal with core TLDs, where to put their focus, what defensive measures they need to put in place, and how to tackle new launches and infringements. So getting into some stats, we can see that 1,213 new gTLDs have launched. Some are closed and branded TLDs, so those are TLDs that aren't available to the public. So I would say just around about 1,000 are open to the general public at the moment. So this is where they can register domain names, and within that there are certain restricted TLDs in that you have to come from a certain industry or have or fulfill certain requirements in order to register the TLD, domain name in a TLD. Then you look at the number of new gTLDs that have been registered, 27.4 million domain names to date. It does sound like a lot, but when you look at the number of new gTLDs, it's not that impressive. About 3 of the new gTLDs have over 1 million, and another 7 have over 500,000. So when you remove those, the remaining don't have too many, but they have the potential to grow. There's been 130% year-on-year growth, which is significant, but we'll talk about that growth in a subsequent slide and what has resulted in that growth. A large amount of the growth is coming from China. So 44% of all new gTLDs are registered in China. And I think this is quite relevant, especially for brand owners and law firms when they advise their clients. The Chinese market, or China, is becoming a dominant player in the industry, and it's important to make sure that your brand protection strategy tackles Chinese domain names as well as domain names in Chinese script, in simplified Chinese. So it's not just .cn and .com.cn, which are the ccTLDs for China, but rather the IDNs, internationalized domain names that have the extension in their local language. In addition, .com and a few others are launching or will launch with Chinese characters. So those, it's important to make sure that you have secured those. Moving on to the next slide, the most popular TLDs. Looking at those, you can see .xyz, .top, .win. .top is a Chinese TLD. They've had significant promotions, which we'll discuss in a subsequent slide. Of the most popular TLDs, I would say .club is one of the few that has grown organically and has a good service offering, and a fair amount of people that do register in .club intend to use it. I think it's relevant. It's 4 characters. It's short. While the others have had some sort of promotion, which has led to the increase of their the increase of registrations in their particular TLDs. So you can see some numbers are significant. It doesn't always result in revenue, but it's noteworthy to see which are the most popular TLDs there. Of the most popular TLDs, these are the 10 fastest growing ones: .site, .xyz, .online, .party, .shop. So these are quite popular TLDs. .pyc, obviously it's written in Cyrillic. That is an abbreviation for Rus, Russia. .space, .host, .website, and .gdn. GDN is an odd one. It stands for Global Domain Names. I'm not too sure if that's such a relevant TLD, but it's obviously growing through promotion. So where it has been promoted is, for instance, .xyz. There were a lot of free domain names that were given away. In the previous slide, you saw .top. That particular TLD is offered for about like £1 or just under $2 for a registration. So it's very cheap. And these cheap domain names obviously result in a large number of people registering domain names. I think .party was part of that. .shop is obviously growing just because it's so relevant in the domain name industry. Everyone wants an online shop. Everyone wants a presence, and shop is 4 characters. It's to the point. Everyone knows what you're doing. It crosses over into multiple areas and industries. So it's quite a good generic domain name to have. So that makes sense. .xyz gained a lot of popularity when Google registered abc.xyz. And since then, there have been a lot of squatting on that particular TLD. Then successful restricted TLDs, and with that, and when we say successful, we'll say within that particular space and that industry. So there's obviously a finite number of banks, law firms, and insurance companies. So what happens is these 3 TLDs are restricted. .law is restricted to lawyers or someone that has a legal license in the relevant country. .bank for registered banks, and insurance for registered insurance companies and insurance brokers. So .bank is sitting on about 3,000 domain names. .law about 6,500. .insurance recently launched is sitting only at 200. But these statistics obviously are dependent on the domain names being active. So there's some that have been registered but have not been used by the domain name registrant. So .bank has and .insurance have certain security requirements, which makes it quite relevant in that people in the banking industry want that security to know that their TLD is secure and for that to be conveyed to the consumer. So the cost for a .bank is relatively high. That is why the numbers do not necessarily reflect profitability. So if you have few domain names, obviously with a high markup, then there's value in that, while some of the other TLDs have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and their markup is a couple of cents. So those aren't as profitable as, say, .bank, .law, and .insurance. The most popular city in the gTLDs, we can see here that .nyc is at the top of the list, and then .berlin, .london, .tokyo, .bayern, which is an area in Germany, .amsterdam, .köln, which is Cologne, .hamburg, and then .moscow, Mokba. So there are 2 TLDs. Moscow is for the Latin script English characters, and Mokba for the Cyrillic characters, and then .Paris. What's quite interesting is that .NYC is the largest, and that is a restricted TLD. You have to have a presence, or you have to reside in New York City, and you cannot have a proxy service, meaning you cannot ask someone to substitute you as the owner in order to circumvent that local presence requirement. And even with that, they do have a large number of registrations. Some city TLDs don't have restrictions. .London doesn't have. Some others do. .Tokyo doesn't. .Berlin does. You need to have some sort of local presence, although you can opt for a local presence provider. And that's what we do for some of our clients in Berlin and Hamburg. If they need to register domain name there, we provide a local presence. So these TLDs, I think, will increase in popularity as websites become more local and people target local markets. Also, if you're a trademark owner and you have a trademark in a certain country, you would want the city TLDs as well, as you don't want a conflict between the country codes, so you don't want to have .de for Germany but not .Berlin. So they kind of fit together. Then the most popular IDNs is .Rus in Cyrillic, information in Chinese, company in Chinese, world in Chinese, network in Chinese. So these are IDNs, which are domain names, internationalized domain names. They're in non-Latin script. .pyc has 94,000 registrations. The remaining shows the presence of China. It's very important if you do intend to do business in China, or even for defensive purposes, to maybe secure your domain name in these Chinese TLDs, or the most popular ones. It's possible to register the domain name in English with the dot in the IDN format for Chinese. For Cyrillic, it's not possible. The name before the dot to the left of it has to be in Cyrillic, but for Chinese, it doesn't have to. It can be the Latin script or in Chinese. The least popular TLDs, so these are very expensive TLDs. So you're looking at over $15,000 for .cfd and .spread betting. I think it's because the TLD operators do not want people to register those domain names. Others don't really fit in anywhere. .who's who, they have a handful of registrations. .autos and motorcycles, although quite new, hasn't received so many registrations. I do think they will pick up, but they are a little bit more expensive and the requirements slightly more strict. So those haven't been doing too well. So the most abused gTLDs, with those we look at .date, .silence, .download, loan, top. Now, these are heavily discounted new gTLDs, meaning you can register a domain name for under $10 or some under $2, for instance, .top. So .top is quite a strange one because as an English-speaking person, I would not know where .top fits in. You know, top of the competition, top of your game. It just doesn't make much sense. But because they're so cheap, it leads to fraud people setting up phishing sites, because obviously the fraudster or scammer doesn't want to pay a lot for the domain name. So it can slip through the radar with a very low cost TLDs. It also leads to a lot of squatting, as we'll see in the later slide. .club, funny enough, is there in the list. .review, that's quite important, high risk as well. Someone reviewing a site, so they could have ebooks.review. So 8 of the top 10 most abused gTLDs come from the same registry, which is quite interesting because they have a promotion. They're trying to get their numbers up. Most of the TLD operators want people to see that, or want the public to see that people are using the domain name. So I think that's the reason for that. But with that comes abuse. So you don't want people using it for abusive purposes, but rather for legitimate purposes. Recent UDRP cases, there's some pertinent ones here with well-known brands. As you can see, Michelin has recovered Michelin France.online within the .top.xyz TLD. With I just see it as a bit of a typo there. It's UDRP. We'll correct that in a later slide. But basically, with a UDRP, it applies to all the new gTLDs. There's also a URS where you can suspend a domain name. That's really used if you can't take down a site and you need to take that site down urgently and is linked to a new gTLD. You can have the domain suspended. It's cheaper than the UDRP, but it only suspends the domain name for the duration of the registration period with the option to renew it for 1 year. But the UDRP is the best route to go down. You can see Facebook has also been affected by this. Kellogg's, Morgan Stanley, Virgin, Marlboro, Ajax, a football club, and Sasol, a petroleum company. So you can see, for instance, Ajax.football. That is obviously a serious infringement because football they are a football team, and this is soccer for the Americans. That someone would assume Ajax.football is in fact the football team based in the Netherlands. Marlboro.ist, short for Istanbul, and then the other party registered .istanbul. And I assume Marlboro has got com.tr for Turkey, so that does cause a conflict. And as you can see, there's some common infringers there. You can see the most abused TLDs are there, .xyz, .online, .top. So the future of new gTLDs, some launch dates in January, .hospital, .fun, .eco, Vuelos, Zurich.radio, so the dates are over there. If those TLDs are relevant to you, you should jot them down to make sure you participate in the sunrise period. Others that are due to launch, hopefully this year, is .app, which I think, together with .web, should be one of the biggest or most used TLDs. So that's something to keep an eye out for. .africa has had a lot of issues launching. There's a lot of shenanigans going on in the background, and we hope that it'll be launched this year just because there's a lot of potential to grow the market of domain names in the African region, and in some cases it's difficult to register domain names in African ccTLDs, so .africa would be the substitute for that. But out of those, I think .app and .web are more likely to launch this year, towards the end of this year. So the future of new gTLDs, as you can see some of the pictures here, I took myself in London, just seeing how some people are making use of the new gTLDs, finepoint.glass, ripe.london, marvel.plumbing, and this obviously gives businesses, smaller businesses, the opportunity to shorten domain names, more relevant domain names if they've missed out on the traditional ones. 63% of new gTLDs are parked, and 6% redirect to another domain. They are being used, but it's taking a bit of time, so really the question is, are people using it, or are the TLD operators trying to get numbers up? So I think over a period of time, once the internet community becomes used to seeing these new gTLDs, they will start using them and migrating away from their .coms or their ccTLDs. It does take a lot of work and a lot of effort, and it has to be well planned out just to avoid any issues in moving a TLD, a website away from a recognized TLD. And the second round of applications for branded TLDs may be happening in the next, I'll probably say in the next few years. So there'll probably be a second round there where trademark owners can apply for their own new gTLDs if they've missed out in the first round. Also, just jumping up a bit is we think that as the new gTLDs develop and more effort is put into the marketing, they will increase in popularity. So most importantly, the impact on brand owners. So relevant trademarks should be secured in all core gTLDs. So for instance, I'll just use Google just because it's a well-known mark. It's important that Google, for instance, would register google.host or google.download Those are generic terms but relevant to its industry, so those TLDs should be registered. Geographically, they're all over the place, so when I mean all over the place, I mean in a lot of countries. So it's important for them to register the geographic TLDs. So when .Africa launches, that would be important, as well as the city TLDs, such as .Paris, .London, .NYC. Then register your core trademarks in highly abused gTLDs. The cost of recovering a domain name is high, but sometimes maintaining the registration are relatively low. For instance, .top and .xyz, .reviews, .sucks, .adult. Then keep up to date with new launches. Our clients that have a trademark with the Trademark Clearinghouse get notified when a new gTLD launches so that they can then make a judgment call and say whether they want to go ahead and register that particular a domain name in that particular new gTLD. Also, you might see one that pops up that is relevant to your industry and you want to participate in the sunrise. That's the priority period or the priority phase for the launch of a TLD, and you need to get your trademark into the Trademark Clearinghouse for that. So it's good to keep up to date with that. If you want to be put on our mailing list, you can contact us and we would inform you when these new gTLDs do launch. Also, you should utilize DPML blocks when appropriate. The Domains Protected Marks List. This is a program initiated by 3 registry operators, Donuts, Rightside, and Minds and Machines. And what they've done is they've said if you have a trademark in the clearinghouse, you can then block an identical matching version of that across all their TLDs so that if anyone tries to register, say, Google.business, it would appear to be taken. You don't own the domain name, it is just a block. So you pay a flat fee and you block it across all their TLDs. And that covers roughly just about a third of all the new gTLDs. Not every TLD is blocked by the DPML, but what it does do, it's a cost-effective way of blocking a lot of domain registrations and reducing the risk of cyber squatting on your particular mark. You can get in touch with us if you want more information about the DPML and how to use that. Monitoring services are very important, and this links with the claims notification. So monitoring services, this is enabling a monitoring service where anyone registers a domain name that is identical or confusingly similar to your trademark, that you are notified so that you can decide whether you want to take action or not, or simply just monitor. The idea behind that is rather know the risks out there and the infringements than not, so then you can make a judgment call or an active decision on how to deal with that. So with the monitoring services, for instance, we offer monitoring services that cover all new gTLDs and all the country code top-level domains. But in addition to that, the TMCH has a claims notification that if someone does register an identical matching version of your trademark that's in the clearinghouse, you would receive an email notification when that person does register the domain name, and that person also receives notification that you are the trademark owner if it's within a certain window period. So those two services go hand in hand, and the monitoring service is just more comprehensive than the claims notification and is kind of a worldwide watch service. Also taking advantage of promotions. Every now and then a new gTLD has a good offering or a cost-effective offering like .top, .xyz. .sucks has a promotion now making it a fraction of the cost. I think it's a couple of dollars as opposed to a couple of thousand. So rather take advantage of those, maybe secure it during those promotions, and if the price does increase, which sometimes does happen, you can always allow the mark to lapse, but at least you secured it during that promotion phase, preventing squatting or any other type of activity. That is just one strategy. And then consider the UDRP or your URS where appropriate. So that means where you see a repeat infringer, maybe you've registered several domains that are infringing, you can include all that in one UDRP complaint. Sometimes what a UDRP complaint does is it lets third parties know that you don't mess around, that if someone does infringe upon your mark, that you will take action and you will recover it. There are streamlined ways of having a UDRP and enforcement strategy. You can also contact us to discuss that, as we do draft UDRP and URS complaints in a cost-effective manner, just so that you're not breaking the bank every time you file a UDRP, and you can rather do it cheaply and more effectively so that you can file more complaints over a period of time and be more proactive in the recovery of domain names. I know I went through that very quickly. I think if you do have any questions, you can email us or give us a call, and we will discuss it with you. If you have any particular questions relating to your domain name portfolio or infringements, we would be glad to assist. So we have our contact details in the US, UK, and South Africa, and our website address. So I'll move on. If there are any questions, we'll take them now. Otherwise, you can contact us at the previous contact details. Marina, I don't know if there are any
I don't see any questions.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you. So hopefully we addressed all the issues you may have, but feel free to contact us should you have any questions or if you would like us to expand into any more detail. Thanks a lot.